Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Ladies and gentlemen, hi. Happy Friday. Okay. Let me mention again the basics of the art of war, specifically when it comes to, of course, Epstein and endless other things that are happening right now, which I think, again, are very good. And I have to tell you, too, just as a side note, but I'm going to get into this more specifically, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, this dude is legit. He's the real deal. And I have no doubt that he's in on this entire operation with Trump and Putin and Xi and endless other leaders around the world, certainly in the Middle East and even some in South America. Again, the president of El Salvador, Bolsonaro, also in Brazil, of course, he's going through a number of different things regarding going up against their fake president, who, of course, stole their election down there. But regarding Epstein, first of all, this is a perfect trap that was set a very long time ago. We're going to bring him up. We're going to bring him into the American conversation, so to speak. Again, as I've said before, many years ago, people didn't even know who he was. On internet chat boards, we were bouncing around back in 2014, 2015, 2016, and we were talking about him a lot. We were diving down different rabbit holes. Endless people were doing this again online, but it was not, of course, on television. It wasn't in the mainstream media, and now, of course, it has been for a very long time now, which is, again, rather interesting. They were doing their best to actually suppress this, and they couldn't. And they were failing at that suppression, and then, of course, it all came out, and it's like, well, we don't need to talk about it too much, but let's just bring it up a little bit, and blah, blah, blah. And then he, quote-unquote, kills himself. And then, of course, everybody starts running with that story, but hey, he's dead, so stop talking about him again. But it's never left the conversation. It's never left the mainstream highlights and the mainstream topics, and it's just never gone away. And so in the middle of all of that, and all of that, again, public pressure to want to know more, and again, was he an Israeli asset? Of course. Was he an asset of the United States government? Yes. Was he child trafficking, money laundering, drug running? All of the above. But in the entire reverse psychology operation, which worked perfectly, and again, as it's been said in endless Q posts, these people are stupid. They do not understand, again, that if you set the table a particular way, or you set a trap for them, which doesn't look like a trap to them, but obviously it is to everybody else, they'll walk right into it. Again, you can go back to, this is hilarious, you can go back to Elon Musk posts. And remember, they had a so-called falling out between he and Trump. It was complete kayfabe. The entire thing was made up. And then, of course, Elon puts out a tweet that says, Donald Trump's in the Epstein files. And then what happens? Everybody on the left starts screaming for the Epstein files to be released. And by files, of course, I'm using huge finger quotes. It's names, connections, it's meetings, it's emails back and forth, it's all of that. And then, of course, what comes out this particular week is that a black Democrat congresswoman in Washington was making text messages to and from Jeffrey Epstein during Michael Cohen's testimony to Congress. So that gets outed immediately. Then she panics, and she says, of course, well, I'm one of his representatives because we live in the same voting district, and he was just one of my constituents, texting me, and that's complete normal behavior, and, you don't need to worry about it, and I've been a prosecutor, and you have to take evidence and information from everybody, including some people who have shady pasts, and blah, blah, blah. And then she does all of that, again, as a rationalization for her communicating with Epstein. But it was all a part, again, of this slow drip rollout that is going to slowly hang all of these individuals. In those Q drops, when it said, you're watching the systematic destruction of the old guard, that doesn't mean just people on the left. It means people on the right also. Because look who voted to release any information pertaining to him. It was everybody in Congress. It was everybody in the Senate. It was everybody. We need transparency. We care about the victims, and we need transparency. Again, if you don't vote for it, people are going to be like, hey, why are you not voting for it? It was a perfect trap. And they all walked right into it. Now with all of this information in the hands of the DOJ, with them going through it, piece by piece, before they release it out to the public, there have to be endless people panicking. Doesn't matter if it's redacted or not, and you know a bunch of it's going to be redacted because it has to be. But that won't matter because it's still going to be combed through. People are still going to look at it. They're still going to, again, make particular determinations. They're going to make inferences, arrive at particular conclusions, and then out particular people. But again, the DOJ has all of this information, which means they have the unredacted information, which means, again, why would they not use that to their own advantage? That's why when everybody says things like, Donald Trump, again, is a Jewish puppet and he's Zion Don and the whole thing, it doesn't equate. It just doesn't equate. And again, the counter argument would be that people would say, but Sean, he's taken all this money from all these, Jewish billionaires and millionaires and XYZ. So what? If they're foolish enough to give him money and he's smart enough to take it, he doesn't owe them anything. He can nod his head, shake his hand, and be like, shake a hand or two and be like, yeah, okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. We'll do our best. We'll do what we can, and XYZ. But then you still cash that check. And of course, a lot of that money is going into this ballroom thing that he's again building as an attachment to the White House, which I think is fine. Make them pay for it. It's perfect. But again, the leverage that he has over endless people is astounding. And this right here is where it slides right into Saudi Arabia. And this is a big deal, and this is worth a mention, and certainly worth a reminder. I would recommend that, again, that people get on the Q board and you type in the search box in the upper right-hand corner or whatever, again, Q post search engine you're using or you want to use, type in Saudi Arabia. Type in capital S, capital A. Type in House of Saud. Type in Crown Prince. Hell, type in Las Vegas shooting or Las Vegas and see what pops up. Read all of these posts. What you will see is, essentially, and I'm going to summarize this, is that in the past, before Donald Trump, Saudi Arabia was being used as a major child trafficking hub. It was being done behind the back of the Saudi king at the time. The king, of course, being the father of the now prince, who is soon to be king once, of course, the king dies. But with all of that said, I'll get to them in just a little bit, but it was being done behind the back of the king. Case in point, you basically had an entire deep state operating within Saudi Arabia that was working with our own government and the deep state of our own government. So when you talk about a deep state, you're not talking about just bad people within our government. You're talking about what the people are being shown and what the voters are being shown, and then the operators behind the scenes who are operating completely differently and more illegally than the so-called elected officials are. And then those individuals are operating from country to country because every country has its own deep state. That's what got broken when Donald Trump became president, because again, the military already had all of this information on all of these countries. All they had to do was get the right person in the White House in order to then pull the trigger and then tell all of these countries, we know exactly where your deep state operates. They've been communicating with ours. Here's where they are. Here are their names. Now get rid of them. And that's exactly what Saudi Arabia did. They immediately cleaned house. They immediately got rid and executed all of their deep state instantly because they don't screw around over there. And the crown prince and the king were involved in that, which is great. Again, they are our allies, and that cannot be understated. I'd go so far as to say that, again, all of this U.S., United Kingdom partnership, and we've been long allies and blah, blah, blah. I would argue that we've been allies, certainly in a good way now, with Saudi Arabia more so than probably any other country. Certainly a large country of that magnitude, with all of the resources that they have. Certainly from an oil standpoint, of course, we have our own, which we still need to tap into, but they were child trafficking, they were gun running, they were drug running, adrenochrome harvesting, after all. I mean, you can pick any crime that was going on, and they were doing it. And the guy's face has popped into my head, but it's the Alaweed guy. You can look up his name, and you'll see exactly, again, what he looks like. But this was one of the dudes, again, who Barack Obama was trying to set up to be eventually the king of Saudi Arabia. But he was the one who was behind all of the illegality taking place over there. And then Donald Trump, our military, and the Saudi military, and again, the real Saudi leadership, figured all of this out, got him out of there. I don't know if he's still alive or not, but they got rid of all of them. And again, that's why when you see the Crown Prince and Donald Trump together with one another, they're like best pals. Now, that's not the only reason. I've been over this before too, and this is rather well known, although, of course, it's never going to get brought up on the television. But the Las Vegas shooting was an entire operation and a psychological operation designed to kill Donald Trump, the king of Saudi Arabia, and his son. That's what that entire thing was all about. Because Donald Trump was in Vegas, so was the Saudi king, or at the very least, I should say, the Saudi king and the Saudi prince were in Vegas, I believe, to meet with Trump. So that entire quote-unquote shooting, whether it be, again, a distraction or it be used again to take out the Saudi prince and the Saudi king in order to usher in, again, their own deep state over in Saudi Arabia permanently, that was the plan at the time. But there's actual surveillance footage of the Saudi prince walking through a casino lobby in street clothes. He's wearing, basketball shorts, tennis shoes, and a t-shirt. He doesn't have a hat on. He doesn't have anything. And he's surrounded by his security and our security. And they were, of course, getting them out of there because there was a plot to kill him and his father. And Trump knew this, told the military told him XYZ, and then they set it up in such a way that they could get him out of there. And it worked perfectly. That's another reason, of course, to be best friends with somebody as they save your life. And again, I mean that very seriously, is that right there can build a relationship. And certainly build a very trustworthy one. And a business relationship as well. And again, a cordial, friendly, you name it. I mean, again, watch these two guys together. When they are together, they're the best of pals. And it's authentic. It's not fake. He's not shaking hands with Justin Trudeau. He's not shaking hands with Emmanuel Macron. It's not this fake, cordial back and forth, let's all be professional. We disagree, but let's just be professional. No, these two guys get along all the time. And then, of course, there was the whole sword dance thing that happened at the beginning of Trump's first administration, which, again, was a huge sign that they had taken over that entire country for the good guys. So now what do they have? Now they have a no NATO agreement with Donald Trump, again, and Saudi Arabia, which is ushered in, as far as the United Nations is concerned, a quote-unquote Board of Peace. This Board of Peace thing is so important, it cannot be understated. It completely neuters the UN. Because what's the UN been doing the entire time since their inception after World War II? They've been making war. That's all they've been doing. They've been child trafficking, gun running, drug running, destabilizing countries, lying to everybody, and then getting endless countries into war, basically, for Israel or whoever runs the banks. And as a result of all of that, endless people have been killed, but now you have a Board of Peace, where Donald Trump is the chairman of the board, and he basically, in this particular board, would have oversight over the entire UN, where the money goes, what votes get to take place, and if the money doesn't go to peace, and the votes don't go to peace, well, then they, as the Board of Peace, get to shut something down. They have complete control now. It's a perfect way to completely neuter the UN. Not to mention the UN building is on American land. So no more UN. Well, we have the say on getting rid of them any way that we want and any time that we want. But do you get rid of an organization or do you just take control of it? I mean, yes, I would like to get rid of the UN. I think a lot of people would, but you also can take control of something. And then you can run it any way you see fit. You can get rid of anybody you see fit. Anybody who shows up showing aggression, sorry, the Board of Peace has something else that they'd like to tell you. And then they kick your ass right through the door. It's perfect. It's brilliant. And this is, again, what money can buy. This is what leverage can buy. And they're in complete control. It's too obvious at this point. Here's a summary of what the Board of Peace is. It says the Board of Peace is a transitional governing authority established under a UN Security Council resolution passed on November 17, 2025, endorsing U.S. President Donald Trump's 20-point Gaza peace plan following a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Chaired by Trump, the board, whose full membership remains pending announcement, oversees Gaza's reconstruction, economic recovery, humanitarian aid delivery, and demilitarization efforts in coordination with a new International Stabilization Force, ISF. It will guide a technocratic Palestinian committee for day-to-day administration until the Palestinian Authority completes reforms and assumes control by the end of 2027, aiming to pave the way for long-term stability, and potential Palestinian self-determination, unquote. Guess who's not a part of this board? Israel. Kind of matters, doesn't it? Because they've been snipped a long time ago, but they're snipped now. And it doesn't get more obvious than that. The Greater Israel Project is finished. It's over. It's done. Netanyahu he's done. The only thing he can do is drop the occasional bomb. And every time that he does, we know that he's doing it. So does everybody else in the country. Do you think that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia likes Benjamin Netanyahu? And then again, this is the part that, this right here again is the part that is so interesting to me because it's the aspect of human behavior. Just look at human behavior. Look at Donald Trump and Netanyahu and the way that they communicate when they are talking with one another. And then look at the way that Donald Trump and the Prince of Saudi Arabia communicate with one another. Look at their nonverbals. Look at their, again, nonverbal communication. Look at their cordial behavior. It's not the same. It's not the same behavior as you see with Netanyahu. With Netanyahu, it's standoffish. Everybody has a straight back. No one's relaxed. There's tension there, and you can physically see it. There's no tension between Donald Trump and the King of Saudi Arabia. And then, of course, again, do you think the King of Saudi Arabia likes Netanyahu? You have to be kidding me. The Greater Israel Project wants part of Saudi Arabia. That was their plan. Obama wanted to give it to them. So did Hillary Clinton. They wanted to continue to wipe out all of those countries on behalf of Israel on the backs of our tax dollars while wiping us out at the exact same time. That was the 16-year plan to destroy America. I'm not delusional here. I've just spent a great deal of time looking at this information, and I'm not the only one. But that was the long-term plan, and it got completely upended and recontrolled by the good guys, and then again, pushed back in particular directions. There's something to be said here, too, which is an interesting point, I think, is a lot of people always say, peace sells, but who's buying? There's always been that phrase. Peace sells, but who's buying? People always say again that the truth isn't profitable, that if you tell the truth, you're not going to make any money on it. But what if you can? What if you do? What if, again, peace does sell? And what if people are buying? Then peace is one hell of a business. Because living in peace and having world peace and striving for world peace should always be a goal. I think anyway. Shouldn't that always be a goal for people? But you have to destroy the enemy in the process because you can't expect them to change because they won't. You might be able to give them an option and be like, hey, let's make a deal. But at the same time, If they take the deal and then they betray it, well, you take them off of the board then. They're no longer a piece on the board. You either kill them, you defund them, you isolate them, and then that's it. And then they're gone. We gave you an opportunity to play along, and all you had to do was take a back seat, but keep screwing around, so adios. That's one of the ways, again, that I think you can build peace around the world, and I think we're watching that happen on a constant basis. So this was from Observing Consciousness over on X. And I want to read through this again because it lays it out. Basically, kind of what I just said. But a lot of people are already aware of this because, again, this has been playing out since the Q drops, certainly since 2017. And Trump's first trip around the world in those Middle Eastern countries, the first time he was in office, which clearly he's theoretically been in office again for, well, hell, almost 9 years now. But the military was in charge when Joe Biden was in office. They were in control. But let me read this thread, and again, I'll get into that a little bit later, but it says the following. Decode thread on what is behind Saudi deal. Trump just designated Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally. Which, sidebar real quick, it doesn't get more obvious that the Middle East doesn't like NATO. It doesn't get more obvious now that we don't like NATO either. It's pretty clear. NATO sucks. It should just be Europe. And wouldn't it be nice if all of these individual countries in Europe stopped being communists? We got rid of their leaders, their people rose up, took back their countries. If by force, then by force, if with a little help and destabilization, we'll say, from our own agencies over there to again bring about peace, then so be it. Bring our European brothers and sisters, I think, would be a darn good thing to do. And kicking out all of the foreigners who have clearly, decided to destroy those countries with all of their illegality and XYZ, pile them up and send them out. But it's got to be one thing at a time here. And if you can surround Europe with all of these, again, different alliances, certainly from a money standpoint and even a land grab standpoint, well, then Europe will fall. And we'll have to take it back. But one thing at a time. It goes on, it says, they signed a new military cooperation pact with MBS, Prince of Saudi Arabia, locked nearly $1 trillion of Saudi investment into U.S. infrastructure and tech, aligning the kingdom to American AI protocols, and reorganized the Middle East around American power. This is the foundation of the peace arc. This is the new global order being built in real time. This is a screenshot from the White House fact sheet. President Donald J. Trump solidifies economic and defense partnership with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Again, this is a big deal. He goes on, he says, Trump revealed the shift with precision. Saudi Arabia is now a major non-NATO ally, and he and MBS executed a formal military cooperation agreement. This is one of the most consequential geopolitical steps taken in decades. Again, Donald Trump said in his speech when they were eating dinner, tonight I'm pleased to announce that we are taking our military cooperation to even greater heights by formally designating Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally, unquote. It goes on, it says, now major non-NATO ally status is a structural signal. It elevates Saudi Arabia into America's highest tier of partnerships without binding the United States to NATO obligations. It gives America maximum leverage, maximum access, and maximum alignment with none of the liabilities. In other words, NATO, UN are dead. They even took a picture with one another and put it on the White House account that says major non-NATO ally. They're giving them a middle finger, basically. It's perfect. It's perfect. He goes on, he says, this designation pulls the kingdom into the American security perimeter. It grants privileged access to U.S. weapons systems, advanced training, intelligence pathways, and joint planning structures. It instantly shifts the balance of power across the Middle East. Boom. It most certainly does. It gives them the opportunity to continue to destroy their own deep state and the deep states of the nations around them. We can't do all of this alone. We can't take down the bad guys by ourselves. What we can do is we can say, hey, look, need some planes? No problem. Need some weapons? You got it. Don't turn them against us. Peace is the plan here. We're trying to take out your deep state, and you can do it. Because we're trying to take out ours, and we've already done it. Even though, again, there's still bad people around from time to time and sketchy people, but by and large, we're in complete control. One country at a time, and sometimes multiple countries at the same time, which is rather cool. He goes on, he says, Saudi Arabia's nearly $1 trillion in new investment inside the United States confirms the long arc. Nations commit that level of capital only when they see the future rising under the partner's leadership. This is trust in Trump. This is trust in American stability. This is trust in the new architecture. The nuclear cooperation framework anchors decades of energy integration. The kingdom builds its civilian nuclear future through U.S. technology and U.S. standards. This links regional stability to American oversight and American safety protocols. He goes on, says the critical minerals framework secures the resources that power AI, aerospace, chips, autonomous systems, and advanced energy storage. Trump is locking down the upstream materials for the next century. Each new deal signed dissolves the CCP's and deep state's stranglehold. The AI MOU is the center of the entire structure. A memorandum of understanding defines intent, boundaries, direction, and access. It is the blueprint before the build. Saudi Arabia agreed to run its national AI evolution through American protocols. I will write more about the power of this, but in short, Saudi Arabia just agreed to the United States leading AI technology in the future. He goes on and says this closes the door on the deep state AI assets, foreign intelligence backdoors, and the shadow networks that once shaped the region through data influence and narrative manipulation. This is the first time the Middle East's most powerful state aligns its digital sovereignty with the United States. Remember, we captured global AI. They go on and say the Strategic Defense Agreement amplifies this position. Future F-35 deliveries and nearly 300 American tanks expand U.S. industrial output and tie Saudi defense capability to American platforms. This sends a clear signal to Iran, Turkey, Qatar, and every actor who thrives in a fractured Middle East that the power center has shifted. There is a new organizing principle rising, and it runs through Washington and Riyadh. It says by naming Saudi Arabia a major non-NATO ally, signaling the military cooperation pact, securing a $1 trillion investment arc and locking the kingdom into American AI protocols. Trump has reorganized the Middle East around U.S. strength and shut down the deep state's influence networks. This is the architecture of a new era of peace, stability, and American-led global alignment, unquote. It's difficult to disagree with that. It's a power play, but they're not saying really why. Yes, it's for, of course, influence in business, etc. But the real reasons behind that first layer are far more important, I think, than some monetary business deal. It's about wiping out illegality. It's about wiping out real terrorism, real satanic behavior. Child trafficking, mutilation, organ harvesting, you name it. That's the real enemy. And that's what these guys know. And that's exactly how these guys are operating. Now think of it this way. You also have Melania Trump, who again gave a speech at Camp Lejeune talking about technologies changing the art of war. She's not wrong. And she's a part of this plan too, believe it or not. And as it turns out, it's also been theorized, of course, that the entire Q operation and many of the Q posts that were laid out were an AI system. Just because we're now using AI a particular way and we're using it for our own reasons, and I don't recommend having a general conversation with AI the way that you see it on TV commercials, like, hey, should I change my name? Should I get my hair cut today? If I want to study quietly, what do you suggest I do, computer? I mean, that's kind of dumb. because that takes away individualized thought and individualized decision making, and you're relying again on a machine to make decisions for you. It's rather stupid. However, with the art of war and with strategizing again particular situations against a particular enemy, and you lay out a particular scenario to an AI system, it will give you suggestions. It will say, here's exactly how you can take down this organization. Here's how you can take down these people. Here's who you contact to hold these people accountable. Here's who we suggest that you work with. So on and so on. And the more specific your keywords are when you're asking an AI system a scenario, the more specific, of course, and detailed and analytical the search will come back with particular answers. This is what the enemy doesn't understand, because they can't use it appropriately, because they don't think in the same wavelength that the enemy cannot make a meme. They don't know how to make memes. They don't have the truth on their side. They're not smart. They're not creative. They don't have a sense of humor. All they know is lying, cheating, stealing, being deceptive, and that's it. That's why they've gained what they've gained. They didn't gain what they've gained because they were playing by the rules. They gained what they gained because they cheat. Just like if you're playing a board game with someone and they cheat, well, they'll win first and they'll win quickly. Unless, of course, you catch them cheating. And then the whole game slows down. And then you say, wait a minute, let's reread the rules, shall we? And then you make a determination in that game as to whether or not the person is cheating or following the rules. And if they're cheating and not following the rules, then you catch them. And you do any number of things depending on the game. I'm thinking of Monopoly as I'm describing this, because again, a person can cheat Monopoly and you can cheat playing other board games, but you can have, again, running with a Monopoly example, you can have the person give back money. You can have the person give back property. You can have the person lose turns. Instead of rolling 2 die, they can roll 1. I mean, you can handicap them in a number of different ways. Or you can look at them and say, game over, we're no longer playing with you. And it can be that blunt. But all of those options can be used in a scenario like this, certainly when it comes to warfare. And this, again, has been what's been going on, I think, behind the scenes for quite some time. By the time that society receives a particular tool, the military's already played with it. They've already worked it around. They've already developed it. And they've used it for their own reasons, certainly in the past. But when the enemy creates a weapon that they don't know how to use, or the good guys create a weapon that they want to use against the enemy, and then the enemy goes, well, now we're in control. And then they look at that particular weapon, and they don't know how to use it, then it's useless in their hands. Which means they've got to come up with what? I mean, they got to go back to the basic nonsense that they've always engaged in. Blackmail, bribery, racketeering, RICO, the whole thing. That's what they do best. I would even go so far as to say that they don't even do it that well. But they do it, and now they're getting caught all of the time. So again, in Q Post, it says this has to be done by the book. And it's being done by the book. The Epstein file drop, perfect. Caught them, now they're done. Everything else, again, the real work is occurring behind the scenes. It's not that the public has to see every single drop, or every single post, or every single action, or whatever. Again, they're getting a lot of these senators and congressmen and women and judges and lawyers and the whole thing, district attorneys, they're getting them on mortgage fraud. Do you really think that mortgage fraud is the only thing that they've done illegally? And when the DOJ, again, pushes forth criminal investigations into mortgage fraud, or they're openly stating, rather, that they're engaging in that, do you really think that that's the only thing that they have on these people? Of course not. That's just the appetizer. The main course comes later. And in many cases, the main course might not even be told to us. It might be, again, far worse than what the brainwashed public can comprehend, but even so, I think we can handle the truth. And therein, of course, lies my disagreement with a great deal of this, is that you need to tell the people the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but, because we can handle it. And that's always the best form of propaganda, because that's what the term actually means. It means the truth. It can be used to tell the truth. So there's no doubt that, again, this entire war is fascinating. But let me get into this aspect too. This is what I was going to bring up a little bit earlier, but now is a perfect time. I was watching an episode of Rambo and Friends the other day on Rumble. And if you've ever catch these shows before and these episodes of these guys, I would recommend watching it. It's interesting. And again, a lot of nice reminders. And again, they're thinking guys. I'm not saying that I think that they get everything right, but they certainly get a great deal. You know, I think that they are, to some extent, in that mask-wearing crowd where they think that everybody's wearing a mask, or a lot of people are. I think Joe Biden is really Joe Biden. I don't think he's wearing a mask. I think it really is him. I think he's demented, and they're allowing him to be demented out in public and still give speeches and yell and scream and sound like a crazy person. Again, I think it's him, but I think that the people around him are controlled. And one of the points that they brought up, which is fascinating, and it's something I think that I've brought up on the show before, is one of the ways that you can tell that the media is controlled by the good guys to some extent, is that they are told particular things to say, certainly on the news. And they have a job to do, and their job, of course, is to read the news. They don't have to do a whole lot of thinking. They don't even have to do a whole lot of telling the truth. They just have to read what's put in front of them and believe it, which means if a message is put in front of them by good guys, that good guys want the public to believe, whether it's true or not, i.e. Charlie Kirk actually dying, that was clearly fake, but even so, they want people to believe that it happened for a particular thing to then occur as a chain reaction to that happening. So, again, you have to look at it also like this, too, which they specifically brought up. They said, look at the questions that aren't being asked. Look at the things that are taking place at face value that seem completely hilarious and totally ridiculous, that you would think that anybody would be like, wait a minute, you can't do that. That seems really inappropriate. I can't believe that's happening. They're not even saying any of that. And one of the examples that they brought up was the presidential walkway that's outside of the White House, attached to the White House, where they've replaced the floors with marble. And then Donald Trump has pictures of all of the presidents throughout our nation's history, from George Washington all the way to him. But next to him, which is his mugshot, which is hilarious, that's the most recent picture that's on that wall. But next to him is a picture of the auto pen for Joe Biden. Joe Biden's face isn't even up there. It's a picture of one of the machines signing his signature. But nobody in the media has brought that up. Nobody. The cameras have been there to again look at it. Media individuals and media personnel have been given a tour. They've shown, been shown all the pictures. They've walked down that hallway, the whole thing. Nobody asks him, Mr. President, don't you think that's a little disrespectful to have the auto pen picture in place of Joe Biden? He was a duly elected president, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they would run through all of their lying lies, so to speak, and their lines. But at the same time, they never even ask the question. They act as if it's not even there. You're memeing them. It's too funny. It's too funny to me. You're memeing them to their face, forcing them to say something, giving them endless opportunities, and they never do it. They just never do it. Now, there's also this exchange, which is interesting. In the White House the other day, or in the Oval Office, rather, inside the White House, MBS and Donald Trump were in the Oval Office, and they're taking questions from reporters. One of these women immediately jumps from ABC News. She jumps into Epstein questions, blackmail, blah, blah, blah. And then he jumps all over her. Says, you're a horrible person. You're fake news. So is ABC. Maybe we'll look into ABC as being fake news and see where they get their money and blah, blah, blah. And maybe we'll have something to say about them in the future. It's not that the woman asking the question is an actress per se. She could be. She could be a good guy, purposefully asking the question, purposely being attacked by Trump in order to help take down ABC. Or the people who are telling her to ask those questions are the good guys. And she's being set up, and so is ABC. Because to completely be destroyed like that in public, with all the cameras running, it creates a very awkward moment. So why not make more of those moments? Now, they brought this up too, the Rambo and Friends guys. They said, well, go back and look at Donald Trump's first term in office. They brought up Jim Acosta from CNN. That Jim Acosta was so crazy and he was so out there and he was so disrespectful that he had to have been an actor. He had to have been somebody who was given a script that you're going to go after Donald Trump, you're going to do this in front of everybody, and you're going to make this look so ridiculous that more and more people are going to hate the media, but that's our psychological operation. That's our goal. Our goal is to turn the people against the media by taking civility out of the equation. And we're going to make you look like the world's largest asshole. And then Jim Acosta goes, all right, guys, I'm in on it. Great plan, great idea. Let's do it. See, I'm not doubting that could happen, but I disagree with that to an extent because I believe that these people are crazy. These people are so stupid that they will, again, the people on the left proverbially, but certainly enough on the right, because they're getting caught up in all of this too, like Fox News. But even so, it doesn't mean that Jim Acosta has to be the actor or the controlled person. He's the tool. It's the person who's holding on to the handle. That's the person who's in control. So who writes the questions to Jim Acosta and wrote them back then? Who said, okay, Jim, here's what I want you to do. And this person speaking to Jim, of course, would be his boss or manager, producer, director, XYZ. Not that Jim's the good guy, but that the person, again, who is his boss, controlling him, that's the person with the orders from the good guys. And then they say, Jim, I want you to interrupt Donald Trump during his press conference. I want you to stand up in the White House and continue to berate him in front of everybody. And do not, let him not answer your question and move on. Create a scene, Jim. Jim's so stupid, he would be like, okay, no problem. I hate the guy and let's do it. Because I'll make it look like I'm the best journalist since sliced bread. And then he does it. And now Jim Acosta's out of a job. No longer at CNN, no news organization wants him, he's finished. It's self-destruction. To a great extent, too. Because you can get these people to self-implode. I mean, they will. They'll eat themselves all the time, and they do it constantly. So those were just, again, some of the points that these guys were bringing up, and I agree with it. It doesn't mean, again, that everybody who is on TV in front of a camera and the hosts of these shows, it's not that they're all awake. They're not. Many of them aren't. Look at Mark Levin, for God's sakes. He's insane. He doesn't know what's really going on, or he does, and it scares the living hell out of him, which is why all of his Zionist DNA is coming to the surface for everybody to see on a constant basis with all of the yelling and shouting and screaming that he's doing. But there have to be, again, some people who are either in on the plan or people who are just smart enough to figure it out for themselves, which, again, is what the Rambo and Friends guys sort of arrived at, one of their conclusions, like a Jesse Waters, for example. Jesse Waters has to know that there's more going on here than what meets the eye. Doesn't mean that Jesse Waters is going to leave Fox News. It doesn't mean that he's going to, expose the good guy plan, so to speak, on an episode of his show on Fox. He doesn't have to do that. All he has to do is continuously call out the ridiculous behavior of both the left and the right, but also go along with particular things, like interview Erica Kirk and try to make it look like you can take her seriously when clearly she's a terrible actress. I mean, it's that kind of stuff. I'm not even saying she's a good person, because as far as I'm concerned, again, deception is the devil, as I've said before. And I just don't like her because she just seems dirty to me. But either way, that's the way that it is. So again, could Jesse Waters be used to expose Erica Kirk? Is Donald Trump, again, part of exposing Erica Kirk and what she's done in the past and XYZ? I mean, hell, Turning Point USA is dead. No one cares about it anymore. No one cares. They're not doing tours, and if they are, no one's really talking about them. No one cares. Just like that. Their figurehead got taken off of the playing board, and now they're gone. They have next to no influence now. People like to think that they do because a table gets set up on a college campus and somebody comes over and tips it over and screams and shouts and whatever else. It's just, it's a light switch, but the bulb is out now. Which means, again, a person has to ask themselves, what was really going on behind that organization? Was it really good, or was it not? Again, when it comes to self-implosion and self-destruction, nobody, again, does it better than stupid people. They do it all of the time, and they don't even know that they're doing it, which is the funny part. You just have to be smart enough to catch them. And this, again, is another example of where they got caught. There was a post on greatawakening.win, and it was titled, "They Built Their Own Guillotine, Analysis in the Comments." And then they simply clicked on, or posted rather, a Q post 3609 on November 20th of 2019. And it was a link to, again, a congressional document, a PDF having to do with a treaty, so to speak, and a communication agreement between the United States and Ukraine. And it simply says, "These people are stupid, Q." But here was the person's analysis. Again, this dates back to the fake impeachment and all that stuff. Okay. They said the following: "They built their own guillotine. In 1999, U.S.-Ukraine MLAT wasn't some obscure foreign treaty. It was a self-executing bilateral framework for deep criminal cooperation, written, signed, and ratified under Clinton. Then the Democrats spent 2 decades using Ukraine as a laundering corridor, Burisma, NGO money pipelines, energy boards, Soros operations, etc., embedding narratives of democracy defense to protect these pipelines, assuming permanent narrative control. Then Trump flipped the script. July 25th, 2019, Trump-Zelensky call, the famous phone call. He invoked corruption. He invoked CrowdStrike. He invoked Biden's role in firing the prosecutor. At face value, a conversation. Under the 1999 treaty, a legally authorized basis for initiating mutual investigation. This wasn't an abuse of power, it was a treaty-backed cooperation. Then in November of 2019, Q drop, again, 3609, "These people are stupid." He says, or they say, right as Adam Schiff pushed the abuse of power impeachment narrative, Q dropped a silent kill shot. And again, the Congress.gov PDF is titled "A Treaty with Ukraine on Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters." Message from the President of the United States, again dated November 10th, 1999. And it's the basis of the whole treaty, and it's 31 pages long. Their post goes on here, and they said no added commentary, because the drop itself was the commentary. Anyone who followed the link would realize the U.S. had a long-standing, fully ratified legal instrument allowing the president to request Ukrainian cooperation in criminal matters. That instrument was crafted, submitted, and ratified by the very people now pretending such cooperation was illegal. Strategic implications, they say. This is fifth-gen warfare. Use their own archived documents, let them deny what they themselves created, draw them into a false attack narrative, then flip the documentation on them. This is also why the transcript of the Trump-Zelensky call was released. It was clean and legally shielded by the MLAT. It wasn't just political cover, it was legal structure. And then they said the stupid layer. They wrote the treaty, created the cooperation mechanism, used Ukraine as a corruption hub, got exposed under their own treaty, then claimed the exposure was criminal, not realizing the treaty they created was the very sword now being used to cut them down. And Q just handed the sword to the public quietly. Final summary, Q Drop 3609 is a tactical red pill bomb. It shows the following. Trump's Ukraine request wasn't rogue, it was authorized. Impeachment over it was legally and structurally fraudulent. The Democrats created the very treaty that made such investigations valid. The deep state used Ukraine as a nexus of illicit activity, assuming their tools would never be turned on them. Q turned their own paper trail into a weapon. Quote, "These people are stupid," unquote, wasn't insult. It was a legal diagnosis and a warning shot, unquote. 100%. 100%. Again, it's amazing that these people, they don't remember what they write. They don't remember what exists. And they don't think for a minute that what they write and what exists can be used against them. It's like, again, a school administrator not knowing what their own contract says. They look at a big building, they look at all this so-called influence they think they have, all this power they think they have, and their massive paycheck, and they get a big smile on their face and they sign on the dotted line without reading a word of it. They don't even get a lawyer to read it. And now with AI, your average school teacher, again, metaphor here, but your average school teacher doesn't even take their contract, turn it into a PDF document, put it into an AI system, and have it summarize their legal obligations for them. They don't even do that. What makes people think that the government's going to do it? Or bad guys in the government? They aren't. They don't read, they don't comprehend, they don't write well, and they don't use the technological systems around them to see if the thing that they're doing is illegal. They just run with emotion all of the time, regardless of the government entity. And every time that they do that, you can catch them being foolish and making endless mistakes and breaking the law. So yeah, when Donald Trump says we've caught him, we've got him, all of it, well, they do. But do you expend all of that leverage overnight and just make one sweeping move and arrest everybody in XYZ? That would be nice if that happened. But again, pop that particular scenario into an AI system and see what it says. It'll say things like, well, you'll have serious instability. You'll have instability in the markets. You'll have instability in job production, people showing up to work. You'll have people being murdered in the street. You'll have civil war. You'll have this. You'll have that. Endless illegality will continue to exist, and so on and so on. Or do you do this one step at a time, like in chess, and take the pieces off of the board one step at a time, knowing that when you're playing the game, it's already been fixed for you to win? I think they've already won. Anybody screwing up now is just a bonus because they've already got these people dead to rights. And they're saving Israel for last. Again, look what's happening. The education, the exposure, the literature that's being read again and being written about, the documentaries that are being made, being produced, the eyes that are on the entire Jewish question. People are figuring this out. And yes, it's not all of them. We know that. It's not about the entire bloodline and all of them being terrible. That's not it, because that's impossible. This has to do with the satanic bunch. This has to do with the individuals who want to kill everybody who's not them. Same thing with the Muslim question. That's the way that it is. It's not all of them. It's just, and certainly not all of the ones of that bloodline. That's impossible. It's about the ones, again, who want everybody to die except them. That's the problem. That's the ideology and the cloud that, of course, continuously remains. But look at the people who are learning about it. It's overwhelming, the number of people who are learning about it. And as it's been said a million times before by endless people, when people start waking up to this, you don't go back to sleep. You become more attuned to it. You start to notice it a little bit more. And when the noticing starts, well, you don't unnotice. You only start to notice more. Case in point, Cloudflare, one of these IP address hosting, internet hosting platforms that pushes out signals, of course, to and from servers. Now, I don't know everything about this, and I'm not going to pretend to, but I will read this particular post that was on the Chan boards the other day, because, again, this went down. Cloudflare went down the other day, and a great deal of websites that tell the truth, and certainly, again, chat boards and social media websites and other websites as well, that use this as a service, they all were locked up and you could not access any of them. Certainly Great Awakening was down, X was down, Gab was still running, and Gab was up, which was great, but these other sites weren't for, again, a number of hours. But here's again what this particular post says, and it kind of runs through it. And again, you can take it with a grain of salt, but again, it's something to consider. They said, yep, Cloudflare is compromised the same as Google is. They are extensions of the Jewish United States, parentheses, government and its intelligence community, parentheses, parentheses, parentheses. It says Cloudflare can block or make content unreachable from controversial sites. Cloudflare can profile and target individual users to make them stop reaching a website if either the site or the individuals are too controversial. Cloudflare can also ban people over the whole internet by blacklisting the IP so that any CAPTCHA under their control will not let you pass. They go on and say, under Cloudflare and other similar websites/services, every IP existing online has a reputation score. When the IP reputation gets low, you start to see content loading slowly or some sites not being reachable anymore. They have a web link here having to do with a blacklist check on IP addresses. It says there are multiple sites which create their own IP reputation lists, and they all cross-reference between each other. Barracuda underscore reputation underscore B, for example. They say just spam underscore org cross-references from Barracuda plus Spamhouse. And then they have, again, other lingo here, which I don't necessarily understand. But they say the complete chain of IP lists dependency is circular. Spamhouse references from Cloudflare, but Cloudflare references from just spam, which also references Spamhouse, so Spamhouse is both the source and the output of Cloudflare. Meaning, if you get a low IP reputation on Barracuda, then all the other IP reputation lists update to reflect that score, meaning you get a low IP reputation everywhere. And that negative score is circular. So wherever it gets raised somewhere, it could get readjusted to negative from the circular influence. And once they decided to lower your IP score, for whatever reason, they ask you to give them personal identifying details. If you appeal them to remove you from their blacklists, it's a scam to dox people. They wrap up and say any site hosting free discussion should never have neither of Google or Cloudflare as their third party or as content management, unquote. It's a safe bet. isn't it? It's basically like digital currency on your speech. You can't have a conversation unless. So the shutdown of Cloudflare was basically a purposeful warning, potentially, by good guys, or a slip up by bad guys to basically say, stop using them as a content manager. Because if you do, eventually your entire site will go down and no one will be able to access it because they'll have the say-so. Even if it's a paid service from the individuals running a particular site. So again, sometimes things like that have happened over the course of the last 10 plus years. And again, people don't think anything of it. They just look at it like it's an inconvenience, rather than understanding maybe it's a glitch in the matrix. Maybe it's actually a signal that's being sent to people to say, hey, look, Cloudflare's no good. They're the ones that, again, manage these sites and manage the input and the conversations that are taking place, and certainly the signal. And if they go down, well, then your free speech signal goes away. So find a different signal manager, basically. We'll see if that happens. Hopefully it does. Hopefully some good guys are behind it to some extent, and they're not looking to, again, demolish free speech. Or certainly create it to be, again, a digital currency of sorts to where people actually have to pay for it with, again, a monetary cost, or they have to pay for it with personal information. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But when a move like that happens and the internet goes down on particular sites and you can't access it, it's not an accident. It's not some kind of an upgrade. It could be a positive takeover, or it could be, again, a warning shot. Time will tell, but it's never accidental. And again, it's a purposeful glitch for one reason or another. It's a purposeful glitch in the matrix to wake people up and to cause people, again, to dive in and dig a little bit to see what's really going on. Okay, education stuff. First of all, I find this hilarious, as I think everybody should. This is one of those things that I also didn't necessarily consider, and I'll fully admit it. When it comes to the business of illegal aliens in school, one of the ways that you can get rid of them, of course, in particular among the student population, is you go after their illegal parents. Because again, if the children are anchor babies in American schools, and their parents are illegal, and you go after their parents, the children aren't going to want to stay here by themselves because they don't have any resources. They don't know anything. They're going to want to stick with their family, which means the anchor baby will self-deport also, along with, of course, the parents who have been detained. So that's happening. And it's happening apparently in, it has to be happening everywhere, certainly where ICE has a presence, but it's happening very specifically in North Carolina and in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, in typical fashion, what the media is doing, of course, is they're trying to spin it to make it sound like students are protesting. That the reason that all of these students, either statewide or citywide or what have you, are all out of the building is because they're just protesting. But what they're not telling you, of course, is that that's probably not the case. Again, if their parents are being deported, they're going home with their parents, back to wherever they came from. And there have to, of course, be illegal aliens as students and even employees within these buildings, and they're being rounded up as well. And there's no doubt that that has actually happened. But on top of that, again, many of them are just running. I just find it funny that these schools and these school teachers are now complaining that their class size is all of a sudden smaller. I thought class size was the thing. I thought that was their number one complaint. Why is the class, well, you know what, why are the classes so big? Oh, they're too big, I can't handle it. And then all of a sudden, a class of 20 students is down to 6, and they're like, it's too small. It's the Goldilocks fairy tale. Goldilocks and the Three Bears. This classroom is too small. This classroom is too big. There's too many students. There's too few students. Well, what's the right number then? What's the right number? These people can't make up their minds. Again, their hypocrisy is astounding, and it just gets called out all of the time, even at face value. Now, even in Jesse James's neck of the woods up there in Michigan, the Clarkston Community Schools, they put out a notification he sent me the other day Staff have been informed by the Oakland County Sheriff's Office that ICE is in the general Clarkston area searching for 2 individuals. Out of an abundance of caution, we are moving all buildings to a shelter in place immediately. Please keep all students and staff in your buildings at this time. We will communicate when more information is available and or when we can lift the shelter in place. Thank you, CCS administration. Oh, okay, hang on now. So now what you're saying is 2 illegal aliens are on the loose, and that's so dangerous that you have to close your schools. But you don't want ICE entering your schools to get illegal aliens out of your buildings? Again, which is it? Out of an abundance of caution. Out of an abundance of caution. You can't make this up. You can't make it up. These people are so stupid, it hurts. If the illegal aliens are outside of the building, it's a problem. But if they're inside, it's not a problem. Okay. But we need to lock down the schools because we don't want them to come in, even though we allow them in anyway. But we don't want that to happen because we haven't signed them up for class yet or something. Again, they're clearly chasing criminals and illegal aliens. I fully understand it, but my God. And would they again look to hide within a school? Probably. Their doors are wide open all the time anyway. But also, I thought that illegal aliens were safe. And I thought, again, that we needed to be compassionate to all of them. And that was the point. And yet, on the other hand, you feel so threatened by them that you have to close down the entire school, lock everybody in place, and make sure that they don't come in contact with minors. Again, which is it? Are they compassionate or are they murderers? Are they compassionate or are they capable of harming a child? Is the only reason you're locking down the buildings because it's a liability issue? You don't want to get sued? If one of those kids gets scooped up on the playground by an illegal alien and held at knife point before the police show up, or even kills one of the children? I thought they were compassionate people. I thought we weren't supposed to be rounding them up and getting rid of them. Again, their hypocrisy is exhausting. It's exhausting. Now, speaking of hypocrisy, I feel like I've read this particular headline and story a million times before. Every single time that I bring up an American school system. I'm telling you, it just feels like it's on repeat. Or I'm living in some parallel universe where I'm looking over at the other universe and it's the exact same story all over again. This was from Zero Hedge. This happened, I believe, last week. But certainly, again, could have been first brought to people's attention a few years back, if not last year. But this is a recent story, allegedly, but it's not really recent. It was, again, from Zero Hedge. Watchdog, Chicago public schools blew millions on trips, spas, and overseas travel. Yeah, overseas travel. A new investigation by the Chicago Public Schools Inspector General Philip Wagernecht shows overnight and travel spending in the district surged from about $300,000 in 2021 to nearly $8 million by 2024. His report says some staff exploited the district's lax, vague, inadequate, and unenforced rules, while leading to exorbitant post-pandemic travel funded by taxpayers. The OIG found CPS spent roughly $14.5 million on travel in 2023 and 2024, much of it out-of-town conferences or overnight student trips. WTW writes that the probe began after an elementary school paid more than $20,000 for a staff trip to Egypt without approval. That's the one I remember. Yeah. Because, again, a public school needs to be taking a trip to Egypt. Why? Egyptians aren't black. Why? I mean, why are you going? Thankfully, CPS canceled that trip and 2 others Investigators later identified more than $142,000 spent by 8 schools on overseas travel, including visits to Egypt. Apparently, they eventually went or wanted to go. Finland, Estonia, and South Africa. Weird. And it says that they, that featured tourist activities of debatable value, such as camel rides, a game park visit, and hot air balloon rides. It's just great. I love it. I love it. This is so funny. The report also highlighted Las Vegas conferences where more than 600 employees spent over $1.5 million between 2022 and 2024. One principal booked an unapproved $400 a night suite for himself and his wife. Well, why not? Why not? Taxpayer dollars well spent. Thank you, Chicago Public Schools. According to the report, nearly 90% of CPS attendees stayed in hotel rooms that exceeded CPS spending limits, and at least 24 took round-trip Las Vegas flights, costing more than $1,000, noting that when the same conference was held in Chicago, attendance was minimal. Well, of course. And in conclusion, and in typical fashion, it's the American education system, ladies and gentlemen. So where is the accountability? It says the following, quote, the OIG urged CPS to keep seminars local, stating, quote, rather than spend millions on professional development as resort spas, luxury hotels, and overseas destinations, CPS should keep its educational seminars as close to home as possible, unquote. Oh, a suggestion. That's it? That's the accountability? CPS has since restricted nearly all employee travel as of October 29th and created a travel review committee. Well, shouldn't that already exist? Or should you just do the right thing from the start? It's almost an admission that you can't do the right thing from the start, so you have to create a committee to provide some checks and balances. A spokesperson said that the district takes the findings seriously, adding, quote, Chicago Public Schools remains unwavering in its commitment to fiscal responsibility and the success of our students. Clearly you don't. And that CPS is committed to, quote, to protect our investments and resources, unquote. The district said new financial systems should strengthen oversight. Reiterating its mission, CPS stated, quote, the core mission of CPS is clear, to provide every student with a high-quality, rigorous, inclusive, and enriching education, and to reduce expenditures in a sustainable way, unquote. Zero accountability. The accountability is, we promise that we won't do it again. Sorry. We're so sorry. And then they just what? Create a committee to say, well, now we have a committee. There's no possible way we would ever engage in any wrongdoing in the future. You know what you do to these people? You fire them. You charge them with felonies for misappropriating government money. That's what you do. You fire them, take their licenses, ask them to pay the money back. You don't ask. You tell them under court order, and then you charge them with felonies. That's what you do. Not so in Chicago. Not so. Now let's taste a little accountability here. Maybe. This was from the Associated Press, and it was titled, Oregon School Board Chair Resigns. Superintendent and principal on leave over sex abuse arrests. St. Helens, Oregon. A school district in Northwest Oregon has put its superintendent and high school principal on leave, accepted the school board chair's resignation, and temporarily canceled classes in response to an uproar over the arrests of a teacher and former teacher on sexual abuse charges. The St. Helens Police Department said in a statement that officers this week arrested one current and one retired St. Helens high school teacher on allegations of sexually abusing students. But that doesn't happen in school. That's never happened before. Police said the arrests came after a 2-month investigation. The district canceled classes and after-school events on Thursday and Friday following demonstrations at the school, during which students called for St. Helens School District Superintendent Scott Stockwell, high school principal Katie Wagner, and all school board members to resign or be removed. Wagner has since been placed on paid leave, and board chair Ryan Scholl resigned from his position, district officials said in a post on social media Friday. Stockwell was placed on paid leave during a school board meeting Friday afternoon, according to another district social media post. Now here's the juice part. Choir teacher Eric Stearns, 46, is facing 7 counts of second-degree sex abuse and 1 count of third-degree sex abuse involving 6 students, according to police. Stearns pleaded not guilty to the charges in Columbia County Circuit Court on Wednesday. Recently retired math teacher Mark Collins, 64 years old, pleaded not guilty on Thursday to 2 counts of second-degree sex abuse and 1 count of attempted second-degree sex abuse. The allegations against Collins involve 3 students, police said. I'm sure the students are lying, because students lie about such a specific thing all of the time. And pleading not guilty, of course, means that they didn't do it, so everybody should just believe them. Give me a break. Attempts by the Associated Press to find contact information for Stearns and Collins on Friday were unsuccessful, and no attorneys were listed for them in jail records. St. Helens Acting Police Chief Joseph Hogue told the media outlet Friday that his department subpoenaed the district in October and found historical reports made by students detailing allegations against the teachers. State law requires school districts to inform law enforcement or state officials about such reports, Hogue said. Yes, it does, but do they? Clearly not. Did they in this case? No. Again, the cover-up is always worse than the crime. Crime's bad enough, but lying about it and trying to hide it? Give me a break. There were multiple historical reports made to high school administration from 2019 to 2023. And this also corroborated the victim statements that detectives had previously received. Oh. So their stories aren't changing. They're giving the correct timeline. Interesting. They must be lying, though. Columbia County District Attorney Joshua Pond said Friday his office is investigating whether the district broke any laws by not forwarding the reports to law enforcement. No duh. Of course they broke the law. It's obvious. Mandated reporting is mandated reporting. Last Friday evening, here it says, district officials said that the high school would remain closed Monday while staff makes what officials called necessary arrangements for a safe return to school Tuesday. Our goal is to ensure a safe and positive learning environment with clear steps toward addressing the concerns of our students, families, and community members, the district statement said. Look, it's broken record time. I've said it 1,000,000 times. Here it comes again. 1,000,001. If it were a pizza parlor and you got food poisoning there because the chef was terrible, you'd never go back. Not ever. But we changed the chef and we promised the pizza's good and the ambiance is fine. Everything's back to normal. No one's gotten sick, at least not on the record that we want anybody to know. But you can come back in. Everything will be fine. Stop going. Bankrupt them. You bankrupt them with your lack of attendance. Stop going. It's that simple. It's the move that has not been made in the matrix that we live in. The American people hold the key to the whole damn thing. All they have to do is stop going, and the whole house of cards collapses. But they just keep feeding them right into the meat grinder. Doesn't matter what illegality's taken place. Murder, rape, you name it. Money laundering. misappropriation of funds, lying, cheating, stealing. You can pick a crime. They're criminal organizations. They're designed to be. But people just keep sending their kids right back there. Well, it doesn't impact me, and it doesn't impact my children, so, that's their business, and they just need to get their house in order and figure things out. They're abusing people and hiding it. They're abusing minors and hiding it. Again, it's all fun and games until it's your child. And then all of a sudden it's a problem. It's it wasn't my kid, and that wouldn't happen to my kid, and my kid would tell me if something bad happened, and I would be in that school in the blink of an eye if it happened to my kid. That's what everybody says, again, in retrospect, or when they're, Monday morning quarterbacking, so to speak. But they don't know what they do in those situations, by and large. Not to mention, are the abused kids still going? Are their parents still sending them? Well, don't worry, the teacher who sexually abused you no longer works there, so you're fine. Doesn't matter, same environment. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Now, you want to talk about, again, legal overreach? This is a perfect example here. Again, there's a lack of accountability in many cases, and of course, anybody in that previous story who was hiding documentation should be found and fired immediately. If they hold a license, it should be gone. Those people should be on the street. It's that simple. Kick them out permanently. But when, again, professions like this maintain that level of illegality and those kinds of people and that behavior, everything gets worse. Everything. This next one was from CBN News, and it was titled, or CBN rather, CBN.com. It was titled, "Judge Orders Maine Mom Not to Take Her Daughter to Church or Read Her the Bible." It says, the Maine Supreme Judicial Court is set to weigh in on whether a lower court overstepped its limits when it barred a mother from reading the Bible to her 12-year-old daughter or taking her to church. It says, the state's high court heard oral arguments last week in the case of Bickford versus Bradeen, a battle between judicial authority and parental rights. Liberty Counsel, a faith-based nonprofit legal group, is representing Emily Bickford, and she is challenging a December 2024 custody order that prohibits her from bringing her daughter Ava to Calvary Chapel in Portland, Maine. According to the Liberty Counsel, Bickford and Ava's father, Matthew Bradeen, never wed after becoming pregnant with her daughter. Bickford maintained primary custody over Ava while Bradeen had visitation rights. Yeah, at the outset, this had custody written all over it. After attending Calvary Chapel for 3 years, young Ava decided to be baptized. She shared the exciting news with her father. However, the news reportedly enraged Bradeen, the father. According to Liberty Counsel, the father found an ACLU judge and flew in a Marxist former sociology professor from California to testify that Calvary Chapel, or any Bible-believing churches for that matter, are cults, quote-unquote, and are psychologically detrimental. The Portland District Court sided with Ava's father and found that Bickford is a fit parent except for the fact that she is a Christian, unquote. Well, I think we know how this is going to go, don't we? I mean, give me a break. You talk about stepping on people's constitutional rights. I'm going to end the story there. I think you get it. This has to be overturned. If not, again, it becomes quite a legal precedent. But again, it seems like the next step would be Supreme Court, because this is outrageous. See, the Constitution applies to every American. We, the people, not parents, and only parents. It's supposed to apply to everybody. If a child wants to go to church, then they get to go. Not that government is the parent. I mean, that's not the implication I'm making here. I'm simply saying that if one parent wants to send them to a church and they want to go as a child, then they should have the right to go. You want to go with mom? Great, go with mom. If dad doesn't want you to go, well, then dad doesn't have to take you. Seems like that's all that had to be said at the lower court level. But again, in typical bureaucratic fashion, everybody's time is being wasted, and now the higher court has to take it up, certainly at the state level, and we'll see what happens. Absolutely ridiculous. I got one last one here, and this is some good news. Linda McMahon made an excellent point the other day. She said, well, the government's back open, and isn't that funny? Schools didn't shut down. Government was shut down for X amount of days, well over a month, and wouldn't you know it, schools didn't shut down. Therefore, why do we need the Department of Education? And the fact is you don't. Again, they're outsourcing it, and that makes sense. One section is going to, again, the Department of Labor. Another section is going to Health and Human Services. Another section is going to the DOJ, Office of Civil Rights. That's how you handle it. That, again, should be the governing body. It says the U.S. This was, again, a statement that was put out by them, the Department of Education. It says the following here. The U.S. Department of Education today announced 6 new interagency agreements with 4 agencies to break up the federal education bureaucracy, ensure efficient delivery of funded programs, activities, and move closer to fulfilling the president's promise to return education to the states by partnering with agencies that are best positioned to deliver results for students and taxpayers. The IAAs will streamline federal education activities on the legally required programs, reduce administrative burdens, and refocus programs and activities to better serve students and grantees. These new partnerships with the Department of Labor, Interior, Health and Human Services, and State mark a major step toward improving the management of select educational department programs by leveraging partner agencies' administrative expertise and experience working with relevant stakeholders. These agreements follow a successful workforce development partnership signed with DOL earlier this year, Department of Labor, which has created an integrated federal education and workforce system and reduced the need for states to consult multiple federal agencies to effectively manage their programs. It wraps up. It says the Trump administration is taking bold action to break up the federal education bureaucracy and return education to the states, said U.S. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon. Quote, cutting through layers of red tape in Washington is one essential piece of our final mission. As we partner with these agencies to improve federal programs, we will continue to gather best practices in each state through our 50-state tour, empower local leaders in K-12 education, restore excellence to higher education, and work with Congress to codify these reforms. Together, we will refocus education on students, families, and schools, ensuring federal taxpayer spending is supporting a world-class education system, unquote. Now, as I've said before, the real reason that they're dismantling the Department of Education, one of many, is because it has been a child trafficking, money laundering operation hell-bent on sexual grooming and perversion for a very long time. Since its inception, not back in the early 1900s, late 1800s. Its original mission, even I should say in the mid-1800s, was again as a book procurement depository, essentially. Make sure that schools have all of the necessary books that they need, and that they have books about America, and that they have books about the world that we live in. That was all it was. That was it. Then it blew up again into this giant money laundering operation, like what existed, of course, during previous administrations when it was there. And then, of course, sexual perversion and normalizing all of that, and degradation and demoralization and NGO influence and so on and so on. It's a criminal organization. But when you cut off the head of the snake, the rest of the body is going to wither, and it will shake, and it will shake for a very long time. That's what's happening now at the state level. That's what's happening now at the local level. You're seeing the state receive endless complaints about what's going on within local school districts in every single state, at least those who are filing the proper paperwork. But for the more egregious cases, again, Even the states are passing the buck and saying, well, give it to the Department of Education or give it to the Office of Civil Rights or send it to the DOJ or this, that, or the other. It's not that you still can't do that. But again, don't expect necessarily accountability at the state level, because these people are jockeying for power now the way that they always have at the federal level. So it's just going to work that way now at the state level, making the state level potentially far more corrupt than what it's ever been. It's not going to change unless, of course, the people who hold these positions change. The people at the state level, again, are going to make sure, or have to make sure rather, that they don't pass the buck, that they don't pass the trash, that they start axing these people and cutting them loose. And again, you have to have the right people in those positions to make those decisions, because if they don't, then everything at the local level will become worse than it already is, and it's already terrible. I'm not saying don't cut the head off the snake. Do it. I'm just saying don't expect an overnight fix at the local level, because that's not going to happen. All these NGOs, again, are going to start reaching into the local level and contacting them directly. They're just going to bypass the Department of Ed. They're going to stop working with them because they won't exist, which, by the way, Congress will have no choice but to get rid of it at this point, because if it's been outsourced to all these other agencies and these other departments, then there's nothing there. So that presentation gets made to Congress, and then Congress goes, okay, it's already been outsourced to these different agencies, therefore, yeah, there's no need to have the Department of Education anymore. Away it goes. And then it will, and then it does. And then they vote on it, and they approve it, and they say, well, we disagree. Well, it'll be a party line vote then, even though the department's already been dismantled as it is. And then it'll be gone, which, again, is a good thing, because you're taking away one of the laundering centers for all of this nonsense. Not just money, but, of course, information, textbooks, curriculum, standards, certification, all of it. Money, influence, power, but it's just going to push it all to the state and local level, which, again, everybody's going to be jockeying for position to gain control of that. And that's where it's going to get real shady real quick. So it's already happening, but again, walking away is the best answer. I have one more story here, jab related, and then I'm going to wrap this up. Over on Dr. William Mackis's X account here, he's talking about Scott Adams again, and how, again, Scott Adams, of course, has stage 4 prostate cancer, and he didn't stick with Dr. Mackis's ivermectin and fenbendazole protocol. He used it for about a month and then quit, and claimed that it didn't work, and then, of course, attempts to take some moral high ground and say, well, see, I told you so, even though, again, Scott Adams has been wrong this entire time. A blind squirrel finds an acorn once in a while, and he has a good point every now and again. However, he's still wrapped up in his own head and his own hubris, and it really is his downfall, even to the bitter end here. But William Mackis said the following and made these following suggestions in this rather lengthy X post, but again, these people with cancer would do well to reach out to William Mackis, because he saved the lives of countless people with correct protocols. He's not saying don't go to an oncologist. He's just saying don't trust them. An oncologist can test your blood to see if you have cancer or not. They can test your bone marrow to see if you have leukemia or not. They can do these things, and that's fine. You just don't necessarily have to take their treatments seriously. And you can even take some of their treatments, but not all. But what he's saying is that if you want to get rid of cancer, you shouldn't just rely on the oncologist's treatments. It's been shown again and proven that all of these other methods that are remarkably cheap and available, that can actually be delivered to your house without a prescription, are 100% fine and effective when it comes to, again, curing cancer. So here's what he said in the following post. Quote, new article, the cancer drug cartel has sacrificed Scott Adams at the altar of Big Pharma. On November 2nd, 2025, suffering from terminal stage 4 prostate cancer, Scott Adams reached out to President Trump to save his life. Many answered his call, including RFK Jr., Don Jr., President Trump, and many, many others, including myself. Within a couple of days, Scott was getting cutting-edge cancer care from the best that mainstream oncology has to offer, fully backed by MAGA and MAHA. Scott received Pluvicto, which is a Kaiser drug, and Ankitva, if I'm saying that right, which is made by BioShield. It says they let the cancer drug cartel get its hands on him, and naturally, the cartel sacrificed Scott at the altar of Big Pharma. The irony here is, I helped develop and pioneer Pluvicto. Pluvicto is a targeted radiation therapy using the beta emitter lutetium, I'm saying that right, 177. I have a dozen world first publications on lutetium 177. Pluvicto is great. FDA sat on the technology for 20 years and wouldn't approve it, afraid it would compete with chemo. Novartis scooped up a $20 million startup that owned Pluvicto for $2 billion and bought the rights to Pluvicto. Pluvicto is now a $100,000 to $150,000 treatment. I was giving it for free, which is why they still hold my medical license hostage. Scott Adams got the wrong treatment, he says. Pluvicto is not strong. That's why Scott tells you he will need 6 treatments. You give it much earlier, when the tumor burden is not that high. It's simply not strong enough for Scott's current cancer situation, and they know it. But I would expect nothing less from Kaiser, to give Scott the wrong treatment. So what is Ankitva? I'm saying that right? Probably not. Billionaire doctor, Dr. Pat Sewing, Asian name, sorry, was made recently famous by Tucker Carlson. Dr. Pat owns BioShield, which makes that drug. An immune infusion stimulates NK cells and T cells to multiply. The drug is supposed to stimulate the immune system to attack the cancer better. Usually that's fine. Maybe you get a bit of a benefit. But there is a problem. Scott Adams is severely COVID-19 vaccine injured. We know the COVID-19 jabs damage the immune system. Scott Adams' T cells and NK cells are damaged. You can't multiply damaged cells and expect them to start working. These T cells and NK cells may also be producing the Pfizer-Moderna spike protein and will now potentially multiply cells that will produce more carcinogenic spike protein. Did Dr. Pat test Scott Adams for spike protein production? Of course not. Did Dr. Pat test Scott Adams' T cells or NK cells for function or spike? Of course not. He just gave Scott Adams that drug blindly. So Scott got Pluvicto plus this other drug, this Ankitva, or whatever the hell it's called, which equals, he says, 2 week plus potential disaster, more spike. This treatment has virtually no chance of working. I can't see this as anything but pure evil and a move to protect the cancer drug cartel at all costs. Scott Adams has much better options, and I suggested at least 1 or 2. That he take Pluvicto plus ivermectin plus menbendazole, or number 2, that he take chemotherapy plus ivermectin plus menbendazole. Both options had far higher chances of success. Why? Because both ivermectin and menbendazole act as radiosensitizers. So they would have sensitized Scott's cancer cells to be better killed by Pluvicto. Much higher chance of success than he has now. Both ivermectin and menbendazole act as chemosensitizers. They would have sensitized Scott's cancer cells to be better killed by chemo, and would also have reversed any chemo resistance that Scott may have developed. Both choices were infinitely better than what he got. But then again, I'm not a billionaire rubbing shoulders with Saudi princes or folks at Mar-a-Lago. Well, again, it's not that it's Donald Trump's decision. It's Scott Adams' health. It's Scott Adams' decision as to what he decides to take. He wants to walk around eating bananas all day long thinking that that's going to help him, then he gets to do that, I suppose. But again, I wouldn't necessarily blame Trump or RFK Jr. for this necessarily. Again, he should have stuck with Dr. Makis's protocol, because there's just too much ample evidence that that's far more successful. Not to mention, if he dies, how is that good for the pharmaceutical industry? How is it good for either one of these drugs? Macus says, I reached out to Maha and MAGA. No one answered. How interesting. Well, they wouldn't necessarily. I think it's unfortunate, again, that they're not talking more about it because it would destroy, of course, the cancer industry. And we would like that to be the case. But ladies and gentlemen, we already know what the cure is. It's been around for a long time. The protocols are already out there. He goes on. He says, try ivermectin and let the world see it. They would rather watch you die instead while giving you false hope. And by giving Scott Adams a treatment at this stage that has no chance of working, that's exactly what they did. And it makes me sick to watch it unfold. Dr. Pat Soon-Shiong is Big Pharma. He partnered with vaccine zealot Peter Hotez to produce a low-cost COVID-19 vaccine. Peter Hotez is a Big Pharma vaccine high priest who pushed contaminated cancer-causing COVID-19 vaccines aggressively during the past 5 years. Tucker Carlson never mentioned the fact that Dr. Pat Soon-Shiong was a business partner of Peter Hotez. If you partnered with someone who pushed cancer-causing agents and now you are curing cancer, quote-unquote, well, that's a bit of a problem. It's also a problem, that's the end of his post, but it's also a problem that Scott Adams doesn't think that the COVID shots caused this because he's in denial about that. Again, if you can't fix the foundation of the problem, you're not gonna sell the solution to the person who believes that the problem that they have is caused by the thing that they did to themselves. So selling them the cure, again, would be based on being able to explain to them that the thing that they did to themselves is the reason for their problem. It's a tough sell. It's a two-dimensional sell, and he's not buying the first dimension, so why would he believe the second? It's an unfortunate state of affairs, but I know for a fact that if I had cancer, Macus would be the first one I'd reach out to. 100%. Again, the cure for cancer exists. It's out there. It's food-grade hydrogen peroxide, it's chlorine dioxide, it's oxygen. And then, of course, it's getting rid of dead cells, which is what cancer is. It's a deoxygenated cell that either moves around the body or it metastasizes and builds within one particular area. So it either becomes benign or, again, metastasizes and moves around. Either way, your body has to get rid of those dead cells one way or another, and ivermectin and mendazole are one of the ways that happens. But oxygen is what kills them. Again, I'm not a medical doctor, I don't have to be, but I'm literate, and I've read books on it, and I own books on it, and yeah. Again, Madison Cavanaugh's The 1 Minute Cure. I highly recommend that book. You can get it on Amazon, and it even comes shipped to you with food-grade hydrogen peroxide. Interesting stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave it there. Thanks for listening as always. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you on Monday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.